Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner. A little bit different one here. I'm going to make this one available for all. Keep this as brief as possible. I did want to piggyback from previously. I had made a vlog of me pitching and talking about pitching a little bit and a little bit of pitching philosophy. And the wind was really bad. I was out on the field that day, and so some people made mention that there were parts of the conversation they couldn't hear. I'd like to go into that somewhat succinctly and show you grips along the way. And I want to talk about pitching and divide it into two different categories. Okay. Category number one, pitching at lower levels. Category number two, pitching at higher levels. Now, whatever you deem to be lower level, higher level, doesn't really matter. I think that you can, if you're a baseball person, you can look out on the field and see generally where you at. No offense to anybody in my area or the people within the conference. We play in a lower level of baseball. That's just that's a baseball reality. I talk to my kids about this all the time. Baseball reality. Some things your body can do, some things you can't do. All right. So I want to talk about this in two different lights. Number one, from a pitching philosophical standpoint. Okay. The lower the level you're pitching at. Okay. Throw the baseball over the plate. First and foremost, throw the baseball over the plate. Free bases kill you. That's the only way that you as a pitcher beat your team is by giving up free bases. Okay, every once in a while you're going to get hit, but if you can do some of the things I'm going to talk about here in a minute, that's going to be the exception and not the rule. It's very difficult to hit a baseball. Always keep that in mind. Throw the baseball over the plate. That can change a little bit as you advance in the sport because hitters are kind of thinking along with you. The higher level the hitter gets, the more likely they are to have an alpha ego and want to do things with baseballs they shouldn't be swinging at. So you can get away with, Pedro Martinez has made this comment, you don't get great hitters out in the strike zone, you get them out of the strike zone. That's exactly right. The higher level of baseball you go, you get hitters out outside the strike zone. Lower level of baseball, throw the baseball over the plate. Okay? So, I did want to go back, some of the things I talked about in the video but may have been winded out. So, camera looking at the baseball. What you see right here, if you saw the baseball coming at you like this, that's a four-seam rotation, okay? And that's where I started the conversation with on the field, four-seam fastball. That's how far off, look at the spacing and everything. On the fingertips, everything is loose right here to throw this baseball. I want as little of my hand touching the baseball, adding friction to the baseball. Friction slows the baseball down, okay? So you want to minimize that because it is a good thing to throw the baseball harder. Going to get into that. If we're at lower levels of baseball, we need to focus on two, maybe three different grips on the fastball. The four-seam, turn it over like that. The two-seam, where we're turning, the ball's rotating at you like that, and the two-seam across, rotating like that. Okay, both of those are two seams. They rotate at the hitter, give the hitter's eye the same basic view. One of them comes out showing no seams first to the hitter's eye, and one of them comes out showing the horseshoe first to the hitter's eye. And that does matter a little bit. I want to say this about that. The reason to go ahead, even at lower levels of pitching, to develop both four-seam and two-seam fastballs is to give the hitter a different look. Even if the hitters are bad, even if they're not quite caught up to understanding what a baseball looks like when it comes out held a certain way, what it's going to do from that motion or whatever. If the baseball changes, even if the hitter doesn't recognize that, they see something different. The synapses, you only have 0.4 of a second or so to make a decision to swing the baseball bat at the baseball after it's being thrown. That additional information registers, whether they know it or not, in through their eye, down their synapses and whatever. Any additional reaction time that you can delay the hitter is a positive thing for the pitcher. Okay, that's why you need to go ahead and develop those. Even if they're throwing to bad hitters, it matters. Okay, as to how they pick up the baseball. And then you go to, again, lower levels of pitching. I want to throw two different breaking balls. Okay, you can talk about the grips any way you want. These are my two preferences. I have a 4-seam. I'll talk about that. Curveball grip. Notice how much of my hand added friction. Even if I don't get the ball to rotate the exact way that I want to, it slows the baseball down with the added friction. You still have a positive, serviceable effect applied to the baseball. Okay? And when I'm throwing this one, I call it the 4-seam rotation on the curveball, it will come out a little bit different, but for a bad hitter, again, it will come out looking like a slightly tilted 4-seam fastball rotation initially out of the hand. If you're not manipulating your arm or wrist too much, cocking your wrist is what they typically call it, then that will have the desired effect, and that will actually have the desired effect as you get up into higher levels of baseball till you get into the really good hitters. Okay, and then I want to throw a separate one. I want to throw a spiked or knuckle curve, and I'm giving that one 2-seam rotation. You can see this is just an easy one. You don't want to throw this one too often as you get into higher levels of baseball, because this is an easy pickup for hitters that know what they're doing, know what they're looking for. Okay, it's a discrepancy in the hand position, so they're going to see that. But for lower levels, this is a very simple pitch to make move, but to not have to do anything to manipulate the baseball itself. Okay, all you have to do is put the baseball in your hand the correct way. It basically does the work for you. It doesn't always have the same reaction. That's fine. You don't necessarily want that. But as you get into higher levels of baseball, you need to start talking about adding pitches to your repertoire and manipulating the grips based on what you threw previously. Okay? What I mean by that is this. Get into higher levels of baseball. If I throw this 4-seam fastball right here, if I want to change the hitter's perception but not give them as much information, what I want to do is take away one particular variable from the equation. Okay, so I'm going to change the velocity of the baseball but keep the same rotation. Circle change up. Notice again, friction on the baseball, multiple fingers touching the baseball, the whole finger touching the baseball in all positions. And I am across the 4 seams right here, so that I give the hitter 4-seam rotation so that it registers immediately. You know, I impact the baseball immediately, 4-seam. Now, they may see something as an additional part of the equation. They may see me pronate a little bit and give away the circle or whatever. That's the great hitters. Okay, you're going to take your chances there. You apply the same rationale and same thought process. If I'm throwing 2-seam fastball and want to change that for the hitter, I want to throw 2-seam change-up next. Okay, give them a piece of the information, not all of the information. I actually want to take this even further at a higher level of baseball. And if I've thrown this 2-seam fastball, then I want to throw this 2-seam change-up, because I want that all to look the same. We're at the first point where the eye makes contact with the baseball out of that pitcher's window that hitters look for. Okay? Now, if we're talking about lower levels of pitching, which is where I'm at, and that's kind of the audience that I'm going to be dealing with, I assume, in these conversations. Aside from keeping the baseball in the strike zone, it's also important to note you're going to be part of some version of a pitch count rule. Okay, I know this from Little League through high school. There will be some mechanism of the number of pitches that you're allowed to throw that is part of the equation that coaches and pitchers have to think about. Okay, so you want to start taking out, as bad as I hate this phrase, pitch to contact. That's a terrible phrase. The idea is to make them miss the ball. But anyways, you need to start thinking about multiplanar movement, even at lower levels of baseball. So you need to the 4-seam fastball to me becomes more of a show me pitch versus the 2-seam fastballs or the 2-seam breaking balls. Anything that moves or slows down enough to change planes, change-ups, needs to be a part of your repertoire. Because if you have a certain number of pellets to use, the ideal situation, if you're the best pitcher and want to be able to make it through a longer period for your team, to be out there longer to give your team a better chance to win, you need to maximize your pellets. Okay, if my baseball comes in straight, the baseball bat has a longer path through which to hit the baseball, to contact the baseball. Put the baseball in play. From a hitter's perspective, that's the best thing you can do. Put the baseball in play. Don't strike out. From a pitcher's perspective, I want them to put the ball in play. If they're going to put the ball in play, I want them to put the ball in play the way I want them to, okay? I want the baseball to be moving multiple directions, multi-dimensions. It doesn't actually move up, so take that one out. So that the baseball bat has a shorter path that it can contact the ball, and the path, the narrowness of the path becomes more difficult to barrel. All right, if the baseball bat's barrel contacts the center of my ball, I'm in trouble. That's why we want the multiplanar movement. If the baseball can sink from here to here, you've had the hitter pound the baseball into the ground. Usually I've got my better defensive players. It takes a different kind of person to field a ground ball in my mind. I give them a chance to make the play. Yes, baseballs will find the holes here and there. That's part of the game. Luck wins sometimes against the pitcher. But you have to think about the multiplanar movement and get your kids, especially your younger kids, get your kids away from sticking to one grip, especially the four-seam fastball. You're going to keep the baseball straighter. There's no reason to think that your kid can't throw the baseball over the plate consistently with different grips. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. I'm not sure if anybody's being taught that, but we need to get away from that immediately. It's detrimental to the future of pitching. All right. Anyways, that's kind of the conclusion here of stuff that might have been missed through the wind and the noise or whatever. But I'm in the middle of completing and editing a